Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we are hosting a PakSoc graduate applications webinar for prospective Pakistani students. And the purpose of this is basically to give you an idea of how the application process works and how you can secure scholarships. I'm Hassan. I'm a second year PhD in Earth Sciences at Cambridge, and I'm funded by the Cambridge Trust. And we have some people who've joined us. Hafsah is one of the grad officers, and she's co-hosting it with me. Hafsah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Hafsah. I'm a third year PhD student in geography, and I'm on the Gates Cambridge Scholarship. And now if we could have the rest of the
Hello, my name is Adil. I'm a third year PhD student at the Department of Electrical Engineering, and my PhD is funded by Cambridge Trust.
Hi, I'm Aramish. I'm a second year PhD student in the Department of Zoology, and I'm funded by an external scholarship as well as the Cambridge Trust.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining me and Hafsah today. I'm just going to go through what the format of this would be. We're basically going to talk about the application process, talk about what the timing is, when you need to apply, what you need to consider, and then, Hafsah, Aramish, and Adil would basically go through, how they secure the scholarships they have, and then we'll have a general discussion about what the application should be like. So the application process is pretty streamlined for Cambridge. It's basically one application portal where you go register yourself, you register your interest, and there are two deadlines, funding deadlines. One's in the first week of December, and the second one is in January, the first week of January. So you have to make sure what course you're applying to and which funding deadline applies to you. If you're applying for an MPhil, it's pretty much standard that you've done a bachelor's or you are in your final year of bachelor's. And if you're applying for a PhD, not necessarily you need an MPhil. You can have a bachelor's and you can still get a PhD. Aramish is one of the examples. She's someone who didn't do a master's and got into a PhD right after a bachelor's. Something to note would be to, when you start looking into your courses, it would be good if you start, having conversations with people of interest. If it's a research area, someone, who does similar research to you, or is in a research group, or there's a research team they're following. But if it's an MPhil thought, you need to look at the minimum requirements, whatever they are. For Pakistani universities, there's an international qualifications minimum requirements, which have been translated equivalent of the UK requirements for Pakistani universities. So you should go on the website. We'll put the link in the YouTube where you can go and what the minimum requirements are to get into your course. Hafsah,
just along with sort of timing, one important thing to note is to also get in touch with your supervisor, especially if you're going to do a PhD degree where you're going to need a supervisor. Some MPhil programs directly link you up with a supervisor, so you don't need to get in touch beforehand. But it's always a good idea to sort of reach out to people who, like Hassan said, are working within the same field, and just send them a copy of your CV, send them your transcript if you have one, send them a draft research proposal, and they should be able to let you know if they have spaces available for supervisors, and if yes, usually what happens is that they help you polish your proposal, your research proposal, and then so you can apply formally using the application portal that Hassan was talking about. Now I think we'll get into sort of scholarship-specific requirements. So we'll begin with Adil on the Cambridge Trust.
Thank you, Hafsah. I'll share some slides with you. Hassan, can you?
Yes.
Make me the host, please? Thank you. So I'll briefly go through the application process of Cambridge Trust. Cambridge Trust provides the largest number of scholarships for international students, approximately 500 scholarships every year. So it is one of your best bets when you're applying for Cambridge. It is part of a funding process. It's called graduate funding competition, along with GATES Cambridge and UK Research Councils. Hafsah will tell you about GATES Cambridge later, but the UK Research Council is just not for Pakistani students. So Cambridge Trust basically gives you funding for full funding as well and a partial funding as well. And they have partners with other institutions across the world. You can apply through the partners, or you can apply directly to Cambridge Trust as well. The criteria for Cambridge Trust is pretty straightforward. You must be intending to start a degree. It could be undergraduate, it could be a master's, or it could be a PhD. Mostly 85% of scholarships are given to PhD and master's students. So it's just 15% for undergraduate students. And the application process is, you don't have to do a separate application. You have to apply with the application for Cambridge. You have to just choose the funding at the end of the application. If you want to apply for funding, you have to choose yes. So you don't have to fill any application other than the admission application, but you have to add a statement of purpose with the application if you're intending to apply for Cambridge Trust. Statement of interest is the most important thing when you're applying for Cambridge Trust. You should spend at least a few months on your statement of purpose. I would rather say you should start writing your statement of interest a year maybe ahead of your deadline. So give yourself some time. Read it again and again, have someone read it for you, make changes, and make sure it's perfect. And once you apply for Cambridge, the deadline is usually December for. So there are two deadlines actually. The first one is 2nd December, and the second one is 6th January. But it may vary depending on the course you're applying for. So you can always check the deadline for your course at postgraduatestudy.cam.ac.uk. So there are two deadlines, one for the course you're applying and one for a scholarship. Usually the course deadline is it also varies, but it usually for many courses it's September 1st. You can go to the postgraduate website and find out the deadline for your course. You can see you can enter your course, or you can click on any course that you are planning to apply. It will show you the application deadline. For example, for this particular course is September 1st, and it also tells you when the course will start, and also so you can also look at the requirements, how to apply, and the overview as well on this website. It's pretty straightforward. Also, I would encourage everyone to go on the website of Cambridge Trust. It's very helpful. You can find the details of different scholarship. It's not just the Commonwealth, European, and International Cambridge Trust, because Cambridge Trust has partners across the globe. There are hundreds of partners. You can actually go on the website. You can search the country, or you can search your degree, and you put the details here. It will give you a list of funding that you are eligible for. For instance, if you choose Pakistan, you will It will show you the detail of fundings that Pakistani students are eligible for. For instance, there is a Commonwealth Cambridge Scholarship, there is HSC Pakistan Cambridge Scholarship, and there are many other partners. When you're applying through a partner, sometimes you don't have to apply through Cambridge+Trust. You have to first apply through the partner. So you have to look at the details. All the details are given on this website. Lastly, make sure you use the funding search tool. These are very important websites. You can go to the postgraduate study website. You can find all the details about the funding. There is studentfunding.camsc.uk, and there's, of course, there's Cambridge+Trust and Cambridge Students. These websites you can pretty much find about the details of funding. They could be college funding, university funding, and even external funding. That is it.
Thank you, Adil. That was very helpful. Just to add on to that, the HEC scholarship is something which is operated by HEC. So you have to apply to HEC, and there are 10 of these PhD scholarships every year. But the process is externally dealt with HEC, but also you have to show your interest. You have to tick a box on Cambridge+Trust application when you do that. And just in addition to that, there's also this year, starting 2021 and 2022, there's a scholarship for a Pakistani student at Cornwall and Keys to study any course for a PhD, a Pakistani student, and it's being funded by Best Way Cement Group. So look out for that as well. And I think Aramish is next, if Aramish could tell how it was for her.
So I have a bit of a mix, the way I got funding. I have basically a PhD position that was intended for a UK or EU student. So it is funded at their fee levels and not mine. So I would encourage if someone wants to apply for a funded PhD, and that's not really like for international students, to talk to their supervisor and then go for it, just apply for it. Because what in my case, what happened was, like, my supervisor was supportive and said you should go for it and apply for it. So I interviewed for it with the board, and they ended up selecting me instead of UK students. And what happened afterwards was my supervisor had a talk with the Cambridge+Trust, and they basically said if she can do another statement of interest, we would be happy to look at that, interview her again, and basically provide what was basically left over. So like the difference. So I'm partially funded by the Cambridge+Trust, then partially funded by this grant that my supervisor holds, basically. So I would really encourage, like, if you don't get like a full funding anywhere, I would suggest just talk to your supervisor, just ask them what funding options they have, what grants they're on, because there's always some leeway. It's not if you don't get funding, trust me, it's not the end all.
Thank you, Ramesh. That's very helpful. In addition to that, I would just want to add that UK research councils, so now international students after Brexit are eligible for 30% of the quota of UK RI funding. And if there are projects which are advertised by UK research councils like NERC or AHRC, and you have a supervisor who has a project advertised, which is being funded by one of these organizations, you should go and apply for that project as well, because now international students have a 30% quota for that. Next, I think it's Hafsah. Hafsah, if you could please talk about how you got Gates.
Yeah, so Gates Cambridge offers 80 full-cost scholarships to applicants from countries outside the UK to pursue a full-time postgraduate degree in any subject available at the university. There are a few exceptions though, and those are listed on the website. 2/3 of these 80 awards are offered to PhD students, and there are basically 2 rounds. The first round is for US citizens. The second round is for the rest of the world, international students. So 25 of those 80 go to the US citizens, and the 55 out of the 55 is where Pakistani citizens get a space. The core components of the Gates Cambridge Scholarship, just to quickly go over them, they cover the fees, whatever your tuition fees is. They give you a maintenance allowance of just over 17,800 pounds a year. And for PhD students, the award is up to 4 years, rather than 3, which is usually with the Cambridge Trust.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you get travel back and forth, travel to Cambridge from your country and then back. And also the health costs and the visa costs are covered. They do offer like some academic development funding, family funding, and hardship funding, but that's all discretionary, and that's once you get into the program. In terms of criteria, the criteria are very important for the Gates Cambridge Scholarship. There's 4. So the first one is academic excellence. To be competitive for the scholarship, you have to show evidence of academic excellence, and obviously this is shown through transcripts, your references, your past experience, and basically your potential to succeed in the course that you're applying for. The second criteria is your reasons for your choice of course. So you should be able to justify really, really strongly why you're picking a particular postgraduate degree. Is it going to help you, in your future career? Why are you interested in it? The third criteria is a commitment to improving the lives of others. And this is actually one of the key criteria, I would say. And what the scholarship is looking for is students who are committed to improving the lives of others. And that's a criteria that's interpreted quite broadly. And you have the flexibility to sort of define it yourself by providing evidence of whatever you've done in the past, what you're doing now, and what you want to do when you go either back to your country or wherever, living in your, wherever you live or work in the future. The fourth criteria is a capacity for leadership. So applicants must be able to demonstrate a capacity for leadership, and that is shown through whatever you've done in the past leadership experience. And I would just say that, leadership experience, again, I think is something that people get quite overwhelmed by if they haven't held, any formal posts in any society and stuff. But in my experience, a capacity for leadership is also interpreted broadly in the sense that if you can argue that you have been a leader in any way, shape, or form, then that works as well. So in terms of the actual application, it's built into the university application. So there's no like extra additional documents that you have to submit through something else other than the portal. But there are 2 things that the Gates Cambridge Scholarship requires, which are separate from your university application. Physically, they're all in the same place, they're all in the portal, but there are these 2 separate things. The first one is the Gates statement. This is the only part of the application form where you're asked about your fit with the Gates Cambridge program. So again, that's where you're going to talk about those 4 things, the 4 criteria. And you should use your background, achievements, previous experiences, and your future aims to show how you would be a good fit with the program. And the second thing is there's a Gates reference. So usually what happens for postgraduate degrees at Cambridge is that you submit 2 academic references for admission, but Gates Cambridge applicants have to submit a third one, which is specifically about their fit with the scholarship. So your referee is the person who's writing your reference is asked to sort of provide an assessment on your fit with the scholarship. And this is generally someone who's able to answer that question with authority and who understands the criteria and the nature of the program. So you want to make sure that they're briefed fully on the criteria, and so that they're able to provide a holistic assessment. So that's me on Gates Cambridge. I'm sure I'll be able to offer some more advice in the upcoming questions section.
Sure, thank you, Hafsah. Just to add on the scholarships bit, there's Adil mentioned about Commonwealth scholarships, which are, administered by trust. Some, it's more like it's been administered by trust, but there's a separate process for Pakistani students, which HEC operates. And Commonwealth scholarships deadline is 1st of November, which is less than a month now. And so you have to apply to HEC separately. You also have to apply to Commonwealth Commonwealth Fund separately as well by 1st of November. And then HEC nominates students to the, Commonwealth Fund, and then they somehow shortlist. And then you have to apply to Cambridge separately as an applicant as well. So you just keep those deadlines in your head, because the Commonwealth deadline is the first one. It's 1st of November, and then the subsequent ones. I think that's all from the scholarships end. Should we switch to questions? Yeah, Hafsah.
Yeah, we can switch to questions. The first question, and this is not necessarily in chronological order, so like the questions aren't going to be reflective of the actual application process, but we're just trying to cover as much as we can. So let's just begin with colleges, because I think that, the college system at Cambridge is quite confusing. Many people, even when they come here, they're still quite confused by it. So my question would just be, what role do colleges play, and how, in your experience, did you choose one? And what do you wish you did differently or the same?
I'm just gonna go for it. So I feel like when I applied, I didn't really understand what colleges were at all, because I did my undergrad at Manchester, so I had no clue what the college system was. But what I did know that what like the people I did talk to postgrads here, what they suggested was to look at the scholarships they offer and the funding they have. I think that was one of the most important things that I wanted to look at. So I ended up applying to Christ as my first choice and Trinity as my second choice. Christ was my first choice just because Darwin went there. I wanted the biological connection, but I think I might have like switched the role, the preference around. I think my first choice might have been Trinity, because they do have more funding and funding options. I did look at the travel grants Christ had, and I was very interested in that because I do zoology and I have to travel a lot for my field course. So that was one of the reasons I did apply there. Some colleges have very specific subject-specific scholarships and funding that they have. So there's for humanities at Christ, there's full-fledged funding as well if you want to apply for. And then it's also the community. Christ is very academic, so it really depends on what kind of community you want to be a part of. Those are the people that you're going to be socializing with. Another factor that I really looked at was the location. So Christ is really close to my department, so I can roll out of bed and just turn up to my department. And some colleges are more like further away, so if that's a factor for you, I mean, you can always bike, but if that's a factor for you, yeah.
I'll just add on to that. I also didn't know when I was applying. I didn't know anything about colleges. So for those of you who have no idea what colleges, so Cambridge has this weird thing called colleges. So you have your department or your faculty or or the school, and then there's a college. For undergraduate, the college takes care of the admission as well, and also the lectures, at least for the first 2 years. But for graduates, it doesn't have anything to do with your lectures and your research. They mostly take care of your welfare, catering, accommodation, and those kind of things. But so there are 31 colleges in Cambridge. Some of them are old with a history. Some of them are new. So I would recommend to go through all the colleges. As Aramish said, some colleges give funding for conferences, travel funding, and even like tuition funding as well. Some colleges are near the city center. If your department is near city center, you can choose college based on that as well. So you have to get an offer from a college in addition to the offer from the university. But for postgraduates, if I'm not wrong, if you have an offer from the university, an offer from a college is guaranteed, so you don't have to worry about it. Although you can choose two colleges while applying while applying online, but even if you don't give any preferences, you'll be randomly given a college.
Yeah, I would just I have a question actually. What do you guys think for like how important are recent grades? You know, when applying for funding for research, how much weight do they carry basically in the application process? What do you think?
So at least for Gates Cambridge, because one of the 4 criteria is academic excellence, I would say that it's weighted quite heavily. That being said, you do have that Gates statement, and I believe there's a separate section in the application form where you can add additional information if you want. Do you guys remember there being one? There's a box in the application portal. So you can always just you know, if there was something going on at that time that explains the grades, then you can just explain it. But at least for Gates, recent grades do matter.
What my understanding of just the application process is like they do have to like filter out people based on grades. So there is like a minimum requirement of like grades that you need to get. So it's like usually a first or so above 70 or a 2-1, which is I think above 65%. But after that, what my understanding is like your supervisors don't really care what you grade. It's more about your research experience that you might have had, just your like past experiences more than like the grades you get. Because I feel like grades are not reflective, and people here now understand that grades are not really reflective of academic rigor. But yeah.
So I'll ask the next question. For references, for references, should you have a personal connection or a professional connection?
I think for academic, usually Cambridge asks for academic references. So the 2 references you submit, ideally they should be academic and someone who knows you very well, and it's not like a generic reference, someone, you know, just writes, doesn't know you well and you just ask them to write one, and just for the sake of submitting a reference, someone does it for you. So I personally think, or the conversations I've had with people, with professors at Cambridge or people who are involved with admission, they really take references very seriously, because that's some courses don't have interviews, and that's the only way they can know how you are as a person, what your work ethic is, and how, you know, how you deal with situations as they come up. And someone who can really vouch for you, and someone who you have like a personal bond, or by a personal bond, I mean, you can have that in a professional setting as well. So go to someone, talk about it, that you're applying, this is what you want, send them your statement, send them your CV, talk about it, that this is what, you know, you're aiming for, this is, you know, something you really want, and then, you know, add that person as a referee. So it's a very important part of the application. I personally think it's even more important than the statement or anything.
I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there's like actually a minimum time requirement that you should know your referee. I think it's 2 years minimum that you should know your referee. So you can't just be like a short-term academic relationship. So like they need to know you over a span of time. And I feel I agree with Hassan. Like you need to convey to your referee how important what you're applying for is to you, because they have to convey it further as well. And they should know what you're applying for. So give them an idea of what you're doing. So it shouldn't be just like a blind, write me a reference.
Just
And
to add
also, I
on,
think give them enough time. Don't just send them an email a week before the deadline, or 2 weeks. Just give them as much time as you can, because most professors are busy.
Yeah.
So if you give them enough time, they might end up writing a good letter. But if you give them 1 week, they might just write a single paragraph.
sure, just to add on what Aramish said, I'm not sure if that's a requirement. You need to know someone for 2 years. I think that's not, I'm not sure if that's a thing. So you can go ahead, ask someone who knows you well, even if it's 6 months, or that shouldn't be a problem.
I'd like to ask the next question. So everyone here has submitted some form of statement for their scholarship. And I would just like to ask, what do you think makes a good statement? Should I answer?
I would, I would say a statement which is clear and shows your personality. And if you make something up to show yourself as someone who's this perfect person who just is excuse me, like you just describe all your achievements and what you've done academically, I think there should be more of like a story of how that connects with what you are aiming for at Cambridge and how that degree would basically help you in your future. So it should be very clear, no fancy words. They're not looking for your vocabulary. They're not looking how good your English is. They're looking for how you are as a person.
I think one of the most important thing from personal experience is just how passionate you are about what you're doing. Because one of the things my supervisor said to me was like, it is a marathon. So it really, really is, you have to be passionate about what you're doing, and they're looking for someone who's really passionate and is like committed. So if you can like show that off, just any personal experiences, why you're picking the subject you're picking, why you're picking the topic you're picking, that personal connection is really important to them, I think.
Adil?
Also, don't lie in the statement, because you can present your profile in a better manner, but don't just lie. And also, I've seen people who ask other people to write their statement. Don't do that. It does not work. You can write the best statement for yourself. Never ever ask anyone. Or I would say, because everyone is different. Everyone has a different story. Yes, there is a format, but your statement, you don't have to follow someone else's format or the story or narration. But you can always have someone read it for you, but write your own personal statement. Also, give yourself enough time. Don't just write in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Spend more time, read it again, change it, make changes. Only then you can have a perfect personal statement.
Just generally in terms of personal statements, I would 100% agree with Adil on starting as early as possible. I think I must have started about 6 months before the deadline. And then receive feedback. Go through as many drafts as you can. If you ask your friends and family members, that's also really good. I mean, just someone generally outside of your subject field, because they're going to come and look at it from a very different angle, and they're going to perhaps raise some questions about things that you maybe missed or that they'd like someone clarification on. Specifically for Gates funding, again, it's very important to have people who are not in the field reading your statement before you actually submit it, because the committee for GATES is made up of people from all sorts of different backgrounds. So even if you're applying as a social scientist, some engineer might be reading your statement. So it has to be as clear as possible and as easy to access as possible. And then also just those 4 criteria that I talked about. I know some people in the GATE statement who literally just did, a paragraph for every single criteria. I know some people who weaved a story about their life and sort of where they came from, where they want to go. So there's lots of approaches to the personal statement. But overall, I would agree with what everyone else here has said in terms of like being authentic, showing your passion, and yeah, just start as early as possible. Hassan, do you have?
I think that's all the questions we had from people, the questions people had, and we've basically asked those questions and answered them. I think that's all from this webinar. Is there anything you want to add, Hafsah? If there is something you'd like to add? Any important point? What you'd want?
And this is open to everyone as well. Like if you have anything important to add, I'm just trying to think. Hassan, you briefly talked about interviews. Do you wanna talk a bit more about that?
Sure.
What does the interview with your supervisor look like? Because I know there's one now, usually in most departments as part of the application process. And what's sort of expected from you in that?
So for interviews, usually master's courses, there are some master's courses where people get interviewed, and for some of them, they don't get interviewed. For PhD, I think for most PhDs, you get interviewed. I think if not most, I think all of them you get interviewed. That's like a requirement. And my PhD interview basically was very academic, like, because you're applying for a very specific project, they're going to ask you questions about what you really do. So if you've lied about something in your application, and if you say that you know something on your CV and you don't, because they're going to go through your CV and they're going to pick something up and they'll be like, okay, you've done this. How did you do it? What problems you faced? What results you got out of it? How did you get through, get through the problem, or whatever the research question was, or wherever you worked previously, how that was. So if you've lied, and it will show up because it will look like very shallow on the surface level, and that's not something you would want in an interview, because the interviewer would have gone through all your CV and your statement, and they would take out points from your statement and ask you that. So that's what happened with me basically, and you should know well. So if you ask someone else to write it and you don't know what's in there, that might be a problem.
If anyone doesn't have any more to add on interviews, first of all, going back to interviews, Gates Cambridge has a separate interview as well. So I had 2 interviews, one with my supervisor and one with Gates. For the Gates one, just very briefly, it's a committee either in the social sciences or in the or in STEM, and they just interview you with regards to the 4 criteria, and again, be as passionate as possible. Just one thing that I'd like to mention here is the fact that we have sort of condensed the whole application process down into just over, I think, 45 minutes or maybe half an hour. But it's important to realize that the application process requires a lot of patience and a lot of waiting. And that's often the hardest part, especially when it comes to funding. I mean, I know people who have maybe applied in the fall time and are still waiting for their funding applications to come through in early summer. So you just have to be patient. It's always a good idea to sort of follow up with the administration team in your department, maybe your prospective supervisor. But other than that, do what you can, apply on time, and just keep waiting.
Cool. Unless Adil, do you have anything to add to that, or?
I think we pretty much covered everything, but do visit all the website. They have details. You can find literally everything. The scholarship website, the postgraduate website, they have answer for every question. And also for use the funding search tool. So that is helpful.
मेरे ख्याल से this is everything, and we'll add the links on, in the bio, or however it works, in the comments
box.
in the description box. And yeah, like just it's very streamlined. The process is very streamlined. Go through it and you'd be okay, everyone. Thank you, Hafsah, for co-hosting this with me, and thank you, Adil and Aramish, for joining us today. Aramish, I think, has left, lekin koi nahi. So that's all. I'm gonna stop recording now.